Hey guys, this is John. Welcome to another Climbing the Rating Ladder battle. I'm facing sgr2, who's 1128. He plays the Sicilian, and I'm going to play knight f3 on move 2, aiming for an open Sicilian with d4. I do like this line for white. It's considered the principal try for an advantage against the Sicilian, playing d4 and opening the middle of the board. Now, when they play e5, that weakens the d6 square. So what you want to do is play knight b5 if possible, because now I have in mind this idea of bringing the knight into d6 with check. Yes, we are moving the knight around, but each time the knight has been attacked, so we are justified in making this many knight moves. And this is all theory. This is opening business as usual. Now white has the two bishops. Black has a slight lead in development, which is kind of unusual if you're white. So I don't want to panic because I'm behind in development, but I need to get some pieces into the action. I might make up some ground because black has a hard time castling here. My queen controls f8, so they're unable to castle. Now with knight f6, they're developing and hitting the pawn on e4. I think I'll probably play knight c3. I could also consider bishop d3, but knight c3 looks a bit more flexible to me. Per the saying, knights before bishops. Usually if you have the option of developing a knight or a bishop, the knight should be the one that you develop. Okay, so as I've discussed in many Climbing the Rating Ladder videos, as you're getting better, you got to minimize your blunders, and you have to especially be vigilant for blunders involving undefended pieces, because that's just free opportunities you're giving to your opponent. And you want to be ready to pounce when you notice an undefended piece or pawn in your opponent's camp. And with knight d4, black's intentions are good. They're trying to play knight takes c2 check, but the problem is they just allow me to take this pawn unopposed with check. Now I'm forking the king and the knight. They have to play knight e6 if they want to save that piece. So black just jumped the gun with knight d4. They only thought about their threat. They didn't think about how I could respond. So that's kind of like a knee-jerk move, an instant gratification move that backfires. Okay, so here, I'm thinking of moving my queen back to d6 because it does frustrate black's attempt to castle again. I could also consider a developing move, like bringing one of the bishops out, but I see that my queen might be subject to attack with d6 on the next move, so I'm content just to play queen d6. I think this is a good plan. It stops black from pushing the pawn, stops him from castling. I banked a pawn. I have the two bishops. There's no danger to my king right now. If left to my own devices over the next few moves, I'm just going to try to get castled. Bishop e2, castle short. Maybe castling long with bishop e3 and, longside, queenside castle makes sense, but bishop e2, castle short, that's my default plan here. Rook f8, okay. So now, no question where black's king is going to be for the time being. It's going to be stuck in the center. Probably bishop e2 is fine. Also, there's bishop b6, or bishop e3 with the intention of bishop b6. Maybe that's a little bit better now that I think about it. Yeah, let's play that. Given that black has no dark square bishop, we might look to play on the dark squares, as I'm doing now. This bishop could be powerful, and black has no counterpart piece to try to limit its mobility. So bishop b6, if I was able to play that, it wouldn't win the queen, but it would force black to play queen e7, and I could swap queens. I'm ahead at pawn, so swapping queens should be good for me. And black is already pretty tied down here. He's almost in a straitjacket as far as his development. I don't see how he's going to proceed without playing queen to e7, offering a trade. It looks too difficult to do otherwise. My opponent is commenting in the chat about why I would possibly want to play him. Well, sgr2, you're in the Climbing the Rating Ladder series. I'll let him know after the game. So queen c7. Now, I'm thinking about castling queenside, getting my king to safety and defending the queen. The only thing I'm wondering is if, let's say I castle and the queens do come off the board, knight g4 is a move black could play to harass my bishop and also attack f2. But I think I can play bishop b6 pretty easily there if necessary. Other moves I'm thinking about, maybe just trading right away, trading and then playing like bishop to c5, I think makes a lot of sense. Attacking the rook, but so does castling, so I'm going to castle. Let's pre-move this move. I have a little over 3 minutes. I use a little more time than I would like since I'm commentating on these games, but 3 minutes with an extra pawn in a good position. And now my opponent blundering more material. Knight takes e4. This is very similar to the blunder made by my opponent, name unused, in the previous game. They just overlooked that I'm defending that pawn. And this will happen all the way up to some of the higher rating echelons. I mean, even grandmasters occasionally make blunders like this, but you just see it much, much more often at the lower levels. It's just a fixture of lower level play. Rook a7. This move looks kind of kamikaze-like to me. I can take it with my bishop. They just move directly into an attack. So beware, if you lose material, you blunder material on a particular move, like, it's important not to get emotional about it. I'm not saying that's what happened to black here necessarily, but mistakes usually come in pairs or triplets even. You want to make sure that if you blunder material, you try to regain your center of gravity as quickly as possible, because you might not be in a good psychological position to continue the game if you're just going to say, oh, well, who cares? I just lost material. Let's just play any old move, and I'm probably going to lose this game anyways. So knight c7. I want to get this bishop into the game. It's my remaining piece to be developed, remaining minor piece. I'd also like to get my rook over to e1 to attack black's king here. There's a lot of good moves, but maybe just bishop c4 is a decent one. I'm not worried about my bishop on a7, even though it is in black's territory pretty deep. It's not like black can attack it very easily. So I'm just getting ready to bring the rook over here. Also, bishop to c5 now looks like a good idea, because black is moving their king onto a dark square, so maybe now I have good cause to move this bishop back. Again, rook e1 could be played. I think knight to e6, just blocking the attack down the file, would probably be the reply, but let's do this, because I like all the discovered attacks I'm setting up. Now, anywhere I move my rook would be a check on the black king, and black is ignoring that now. Here, I think I have a nifty checkmate in 3. Checkmate in 3. If you want to figure out what it is, pause your video right now, because I'm about to play it. Okay, so when you're looking at discoveries, if you can do a double check will always ensure that your opponent has to move their king. So the line I'm calculating here is rook to e6 check, and my rook is defended by the bishop, and he's checked both ways. His king has to move. d8 is the only safe square. Then I can play bishop e7 check. King has to go to e8, and then I swoop in with the knight d6 checkmate. It's a really lovely checkmate. Sometimes I might pause and look for an even faster mate, but if you see a force mate in 3, even if there's a force mate in 2 present, don't feel too bad about going for the force mate in 3. In this case, I think this is just the best move, but let's see if black allows me to execute this mate. So king d8 forced, bishop e7, king e8, knight d6. And this game was largely determined by that early decision by black to play knight to d4, which blundered the e5 pawn. They can potentially come back from that one pawn loss, but when they blundered the piece a couple moves later, knight takes e4, that's where the game was lost for black definitively. I'm just never ever going to blow that. Granted, a player around their rating might blow that. As white, it's not out of the question, but if you're white there, you're loving life because you're up a piece with a better position to boot. So nice checkmate here at the end. He's asking if I'm playing 9 people at once. I'm going to analyze this game and then go back and tell him later. But so I opened with e4, and black played the Sicilian. So I played the open Sicilian with d4 on move 3. This can be played whether black plays d6 or e6 as well. Those are 2 other popular moves in addition to knight c6. So with d4, white is opening up lines in the center. Remember, the prime way that we open lines in a position is by means of a pawn break or offering a pawn trade. We do have to move the knight again, so that is one downside as far as opening principles go. And with the line black is playing, this demands precise knowledge. I've seen many a game where, in response to e5, white will take on c6. So knight takes c6, but this is ill-advised because black can play b takes c6, capturing towards the center, and black has good control over several key points, specifically d5 and d4. Shout out to my buddy Tony Rotella, by the way. He's the author of The Killer Sicilian, which is a book devoted to this line as black. This is called the Kalashnikov variation, and he makes a good case for the Kalashnikov in his book. So e5, and I played knight b5. If this move is available, knight b5, you generally want to play it because you're targeting the d6 square. By virtue of black playing e5, they weaken d6. They also weaken d5. This is a square that white might use in the middle game. You can imagine if I was able to jump a knight up to here, it's nice that black can't attack that knight with their pawn. So knight b5 was played, a6. It's also possible for black to play knight f6 or d6. Knight f6 would attack that pawn on e4. We'd transpose to a line called the Sveshnikov variation if that were to be played. And there's also pawn d6, which is the main line in Tony's book on the Kalashnikov. So here, even though black is kind of winning some time by attacking the knight, they have had to part with their dark square bishop. And I don't think king e7 is going to be a great move here. So black must take it with their dark square bishop. And now I just want to make sure I don't fall too far behind in development. So it's nice that after knight f6, I can play a developing move that also defends e4. And here's where the lack of a dark square bishop is telling for black, because it's just hard for them to proceed without dislodging my queen. So I think maybe black should play queen e7, offering a trade. Although in the event of this endgame even, say bishop to g5, white can threaten to bring the knight into d5. This knight is pinned. I like white's position here. I may castle long. So I think white has somewhat of an edge regardless. But after knight c3, black just got ahead of himself. He got blinders on. He only saw the attack on c2 by playing knight d4 and didn't pause to think how I would respond to this. Or maybe he paused to think and saw that I could play something like bishop d3 defending the pawn, whereupon knight d4 would just look like a tempo-gaining move. But this blunders the e5 pawn. Queen takes e5 check. And fortunately for black, it's only a pawn. They found the best move, knight e6, so good job on that one, sgr2. Anything else, I could play queen takes d4 on the next move. And here I move the queen back to d6. Annoying move. I'm neglecting my development once more, but I'm essentially saying that I think this move is so annoying for you, it's worth a whole tempo for me to play it, because you can't castle, and also you can't push your d-pawn. So black played rook f8. I'm not sure why this move was played. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think black should maybe offer a queen trade, even though they're down a pawn and they might want to keep pieces on the board. It's just hard to see how they would proceed without trading queens, without getting rid of my queen from d6. Maybe b5, bishop b7 is an idea, since the bishop is having trouble developing the conventional way. But rook f8, on the other hand, I can't think of a compelling reason to play that move. So I just developed. I do have pieces I need to bring into the fray. I could consider more attacking lines like e5, but I think it's high time to get my bishops into the game and get castled. So bishop e3. This also eyes the b6 square, so if black jumped to g4, I was planning on playing bishop b6. Black played queen c7. So here, I'm open to the idea of trading queens, but by castling, I'm saying, if you want to trade queens, you have to allow me a couple useful moves, getting my king to safety and getting my rook up to d6. I don't think there's much wrong with trading on c7 either, but it's nice when you're able to trade on your own terms. That's what I'm doing with castle's queenside. So black did take. We had this swap. I thought black might consider knight to g4, hitting the bishop and also the f2 pawn, but I saw that I could play bishop to b6 in that case, holding the f2 pawn from a distance and still cramping black. Look at the effect these two pieces have. Black cannot push the b or the d pawns, and because of that, their bishop on c8 is locked in jail. Here, black made another mistake, though. So after rook takes d6, black played knight takes e4, overlooking the fact that that pawn is defended, which is a curious error. It seems like black might have just lost track of the defenders of that particular pawn, because if knight takes e4 were to be good, it stands to reason it would have been good on any of the previous moves when black's knight was on f6 and my knight was already here. So I suspect that black just kind of lost their bearings and forgot that e4 was protected. And that's what can happen in chess. If you're not vigilant every move, you can experience a lapse in concentration and make a blunder. And here, rook a7. This is along the same lines as rook f8. I can't really find a good reason to play that move. Unfortunately for black, it just loses a rook. So it takes. It's a losing position, but I think their best chance is to try to get the bishop out. b5, bishop to b7. Try for something like that. And after this, it's too much material. I brought my bishop into the game, getting ready to bring the rook into the action as well. Even though we're ahead in material, that's no excuse not to coordinate our position. Here I lined up discoveries. Black should probably move their king away, maybe king d8. But as played, I was able to do this. Nifty checkmate in 3, all forced. We always want to follow our forcing moves. So get the knight checkmate at the end. Okay, so a reasonable opening played by Black. As you get higher and higher rated, you will encounter people who are more knowledgeable in the opening. It's likely that Black has studied this line before. Knight c6 and e5. The downside of this variation, you weaken a couple squares. If you're on the white side, you want to remember to play knight b5 to try to take advantage of those 2 squares. I would say that Black was playing fine up until that knight d4 blunder. I think queen e7, it's very much a game. But knight d4, Black just took their eye off the ball and allowed queen takes e5 check. And then especially later, the knight takes e4 mistake. This game was extremely similar to the last one against name unused. First, there was a blunder. Actually, in that game, I guess my opponent just blundered a piece straight up. But same type of blunder. A knight taking something in the center, not realizing that that pawn was defended. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this game, and I will continue climbing the rating ladder and playing people of various rating levels on chess.com. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.